Uh, all right, I'll go ahead and just say the prayer.
All right.
All right. Dear Heavenly Father, as we come before thee this time, I'd like to thank thee for this day. I'd like to thank thee for the opportunity that we have to meet together as a group and to discuss this week's class and case studies. We are grateful for the opportunity we have to go to school and to better ourselves through education. And we're also grateful for this opportunity to go to a school that allows us to expand our testimonies and the presence of the gospel in our lives. Please help thy spirit to with us so that we might be able to learn the concepts we need to understand to further progress in this course and throughout our lives. Father, know that we are grateful for thee and for the influence of the Holy Ghost, as well as the connection we have with our Savior Jesus Christ. I want to say this in the name of our beloved Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Okay. So my thought is we just work our way through these questions, these discussion questions first, and then
That's good.
afterwards we can go over the assignment. Um, yeah. Okay. Sorry, I have a lot of windows pulled up and I accidentally closed the discussion one. Here, I'm
You're good.
All right.
pulling that up. All right, so since I started the group meeting this week, I'll just go ahead and just act as the facilitator, if you guys don't mind.
That sounds great.
Then we'll just go over the questions. All right, so first question is many of our discussions center on the understanding success or making crucial decisions. Today we are trying to account for failure. To begin our group discussion, let's quickly reconstruct the key elements of the CAKE financial business model. So the customer value proposition, go-to-market plan, technology and operation strategy, and cash flow formula. So what did you guys think about their, I guess, their business plan or their the elements of their business model?
Try to remember.
Let's see. This is the Stephen Carpenter.
No,
Correct.
we're doing cake, so that.
Okay. That's the Stephen Carpenter one.
Oh, was it? Oh, yeah, sorry, I
Yeah.
apologize.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Sorry, I was in the end of the week. Now I'm like midweek or whatever. So
Yeah.
I'm about to see the question. Okay. So are we doing was the opportunity that Carper identified?
No, it's a different question. It's what did we think of the business model? So what are the key elements of his business model? So,
Okay, so I don't want to get too confused, but so Cake was the one that in fact I'm gonna go to my notes real quick.
yeah, please do.
Sorry.
So Cake was the investing model, right? So it was the business that was
Right.
like early 2005 was trying to use social media to help build a network of investors that was going to hopefully track better than general market returns
Right.
and help investors, families, friends connect to kind of see what everyone's doing to get the best investment possible.
Yeah, I thought that his model was really good because he had tested it out. I mean, obviously we saw that poll. I think it was in like Exhibit 2 or 4 or something like that. There was the poll where it showed that everyone was a lot more, I guess, willing to talk with their family about it, and so he took that and threw that into a format to where you could see all of your portfolios and then you could see others and they could collaborate for free rather than spending money and having to go with actual professionals, which they still could if they wanted to for a pretty cheap price of $100, I think. So I thought it was a pretty good layout.
So I mean, I agree that I thought the idea was really interesting, and I thought that many other investors, like many investors, would probably be on board with that idea. Um, obviously the company didn't go the way Carpenter wanted it to, uh, but I think the value proposition was because it didn't work out the way he wanted to. I guess the value proposition was never quite what it needed to be to really make the company very super successful. But um, I do think the motivation behind it was good. I struggled with. I feel like he could have found out earlier on some of the mistakes that he was making. Like they put a lot of time and money into the um, social media aspects or the networking side of it, with like connecting family and friends, because they learned that most investors weren't interested in social media in any aspect. So that was a big fault early on, in my opinion. As well as they also spent way too much time and effort on as I said, on the back end of the website. So it just really wasn't user friendly or didn't look very appealing. So those were two huge mistakes that that really kind of, in my opinion, were the catalyst that led to the downfall of Cake.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, you guys kind of really rushed everything. It felt like at one point when they were watching it, when they were launching the alpha phase, I think it was in March of 2007, they wanted to meet this, I can't remember what it was called. There was some conference or group they wanted to kind of launch it at. And so they just went, if we go to beta phase, they launched a few months later. And so they were able to really cement everything they wanted. And they kind of just kind of really rushed it, and everything that they wanted to be wasn't exactly ready. And so then they had all these complaints, which is good because they could get feedback, but it wasn't where it needed to be at that point. So I think that also really hurt it in its long run. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not very good at speaking.
Neither am I, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. I think.
Yeah, I mean, because he had another thing I thought was interesting is he had a lot of different revenue streams. The premium service. There's a lot of advertisements that he could have sold like a good chunk to. He talks in here. You kind of go through. He has bounty payments and things like that were going to potentially be very profitable. But I think it all hinged on. Well, it all hinged on usership. How many investors could he get using this site regularly? And he assumed that just because people were excited about the idea that they would do it. I think there's a good lesson there, learning that just because you have a good idea doesn't mean it's going to make money. Like you have to have your due diligence done. Like to me, I felt this was a good example of a guy that had an idea, made an assumption, and then was trying to convince the market that his assumption was correct instead of changing his assumption to something that would have been more profitable. Although it probably did end up making him money anyway, since he did sell to eTrader.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, it could have been a lot better if he would have just done his research.
So yeah.
Okay, I think that. So we're on to number 2 then. Is that?
Yep.
I think we kind of got number 1.
Yeah. So I guess we take a vote now. Haven't done that yet. So was Cake doomed from the beginning, or was this premise promising, or was this a promising business model? So who thinks that it was doomed from the beginning? I think it was doomed from the beginning, in my opinion. And then
yeah, like I feel like it's like almost like a mixture of both. Like it kind of was doomed in some aspects, but in other aspects it was actually really promising. But then as time went on, those aspects that weren't good ended up overriding those that were promising, which doomed it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so like I kind of think both, but I guess overall I would say, yeah, it was doomed from the beginning.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, my big, another thing that I kind of thought of as I read this question is just seeing that with investing, I don't think it's been, several years since this business went out, like this customer went out, this idea went out of business or was sold, I should say, and to a specific brokerage company, E-Trader, and nothing else in the market has come to like take its place. And investing has kind of continued to do what it's from, at least from what little research I did. Like there's no other option like where that took the same idea of, hey, let's get together as friends and family and see what everyone else is doing. Like although they might want to talk and listen to advice from friends and family, they don't want to publicize it. So I just feel like just that premise alone, like, was never going to take off the ground. Like if the business didn't work because of, the guy Carpenter made some business mistakes early on, then maybe another business would have picked up the idea because his idea was out there for several years. It was for like 5 years was out there. Then someone else would have picked it up, improved it, and then brought it to market. And that just really hasn't happened on a major scale. So I just don't know if there was ever a serious market for this idea. So that was one of my big things that I kind of thought of as I was going through this model. But
That's interesting.
so yeah. Well, this takes us to our next discussion and our next question. So we need to discuss Stephen's approach to the opportunity. Try to understand if anything Stephen could have done differently that may have produced a better outcome. So it says the first time it says on page 3, Stephen says, in retrospect, I'm not sure if these early focus groups were very helpful. They validated our high-level concept, but we did not seek feedback on a specific product. We learned that focus groups from technical products can be unreliable because people can't always say what they want until they actually see it and play around with it. We would have learned more by building a lightweight product and watching how investors used it. We also didn't get much sense of user segmentation from our early focus groups. Later, we learned that there are important but subtle differences between active investors who track their portfolios daily and main investors who pay less attention. So that was the first thing. So what they could have done different, I guess, in that regard.
So do you guys have Spotify?
Yeah.
So you know how, so now if you do the free version, you can kind of get a taste of it. You can, there's just a lot of restrictions that you can't do, but you have the main idea of what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that he mentions there that he could have done, to where he could have done like a free version, and they could have seen kind of what it's about, and then just have that opportunity to buy into the full thing. Where, in other words, he just started out by them needing to buy the full thing, and they didn't really like it, so they wouldn't come back. His retention is terrible, and I think that's what kind of doomed him. So,
yeah, I think that's a really good assessment. Yeah, he went big on that. Just the full launch website really quick. Yeah, I agree with that. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I'm just trying to think of what else. I really like the analogy, that analogy between Spotify.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was a great way to describe it. Was
what on my notes I've written down, like he thought big from the start. And I'm trying to think what that means, because I think he's thinking big from the start, like he wanted to go really large with it, but that's not always the best way to do things. Like he said that focus groups weren't helpful. I think it's how they went about the focus groups that wasn't very helpful. Like if he would have done it kind of like the Spotify thing, if he would have had a kind of a free version that was kind of not complete but had the main ideas in there, I think that could have worked a lot better than what they did. And so I think it's just how they tested it was what didn't work.
Yeah, it looks like they got a bunch of people in the room, expressed an idea, and then had them all the people in that room jump on board. But they didn't have a minimal viable product. They didn't have a like you said, something that offered kind of the idea of what you'd be using. There's a lot of like research and studies that talk about just how important even like layouts of websites or apps are, that if you have buttons or information in the wrong spot, how users really dislike it. And he spent such a little amount of time doing that, like focused on that. He felt like, well, this idea is just so great, everyone's just going to love it. But if it's confusing, because not all investors are tech savvy or want to put the time in, especially, this was 13 years ago. And, we probably were using the internet pretty regularly 13 years ago, but high level, like investors, they talk about the age range of, people that are, 30 to 60, depending on what they did for work, that's going to vary greatly, their personal use of the internet. Mm-hmm. So again, there's some big assumptions he made that were really, really detrimental.
It's true.
So the next talking point is on page 10. Stephen says, there is no way you could have learned from upfront through interviews or focus groups. There were lots of precedents pointing to a strong social component, including investment clubs and active communities on sites like Raging Bull. So what assumptions did he make? Do you think that how could he have changed his assumption to have better, served cakes, long-term success?
I think the problem is that he did assume. He shouldn't have assumed from the beginning. He should have figured out who the target audience was at the very beginning and then kind of focused on them. I think it's kind of what we've been saying. It's just he just didn't go about it the right way.
Yeah, I think that was a really good point. Cooper, do you have anything else to add?
Just with that, I think it's almost impossible not to have assumptions when it comes to running a business, because you're always going to have those goals. You're always going to have, if you didn't have assumptions, then you wouldn't really have an idea of what you wanted in your business or what you thought it could do, and not taking anything away from what you said. I'm just saying, I think he had those assumptions, but he didn't care what was happening. His studies, I guess his tests weren't that well thought through at the beginning. And by the time that he started to take in those tests and start doing things to help out the website, he was already doomed. So that's just, that was my thought.
As you guys were talking, because you guys both make good comments about assumptions, and something that came to mind was that I feel, or at least I think that one of the things that he did is that he had an idea about the growth of social media and its implication and its application, I should say, when it comes to the investing world. And it looks, I'm not sure, but I would assume he tested this theory in Silicon Valley, right, where he was at, which is a predominantly tech savvy culture. So obviously, if he's focus group testing in probably the most tech literate portion of the country, right? These are going to be the people that are going to be using anything revolving around technology, especially new and exciting technology such as social media at that time that was just breaking out, that he's probably going to get a skewed response from that. So I think another thing I think that with this his initial assumption about, hey, I have this idea that, it sounds good. There's a little bit of research that backs it up. But to me, it was almost like he saw this trend or this bandwagon. It's like, hey, I'm going to jump on, add my twist to it, and I'm going to make a bunch of money. I wonder if that was kind of what led him to where he was at. He's like, hey, there's this huge growth in MySpace and Facebook. It's blowing up. These companies are really taking off with this new idea of connecting on the internet. So what if I just do this with investing and I'll get that market niche? And so I wonder if just trying to bandwagon that social media wave was enough that hey, this would be awesome. Let's just do it like this.
Yeah.
That makes sense too.
Yeah, that was a huge assumption.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. Yeah.
So, all right. So we need to come up with a list. Next, we need to come up with a list of ways Steven's approach is different from Rent the Runway, Dropbox, and Mint. And then, so which one was Mint? I don't remember Mint offhand.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
Which one was Mint?
So Mint and Dropbox, I didn't really know what was going on. And yeah, so those two I didn't really do. Rent the Runway, I can just start off by saying that they definitely went with a smaller approach. I think they only had like 80 dresses in stock at that time. And it wasn't until they had like 5,000 back orders that they made the decision whether or not they needed to get more dresses, and so that was something, again, that he obviously didn't do because he spent time just going big at the beginning and not really worrying about what the outcome would be in the first month or 2 months. He just went all out, where Rent the Runway started out small and worked their way up.
Yeah, I think one of the I think there are several things that that he did very differently. You did a great example, Rent the Runway. Yeah, they really did a great job of building their value proposition, right? So they found a good, hey, we have this idea, let's change it and modify it little by little as they worked and talked and met with a bunch of people, right? They met with designers. Their idea changed from they wanted to have like designers kind of help like be more involved at first. They were looking to try to get dresses at like the designers to lend dresses, or I forget exactly how they wanted to do it. They didn't want to have to buy the dresses outright. But ultimately, they did do that, right? So how they were willing to talk and work with people that they needed to partner with. They also did a really good job of, once they had like a decent understanding of the value that they wanted to offer customers, they really focused on small niches first of their customer segment, and then they grew from there. They did limited releases of just a few people, realized, oh, hey, there's a lot of people interested. They launched a little bit bigger, which then blew up. And then they had to, like you said, Cooper, then they had to go buy or they were looking at buying 5,000 dresses, significantly sooner than they thought they were going to. So I thought that was a really interesting idea.
Yeah. And then with Dropbox is kind of what we were saying about Spotify. They added in, it was a freemium business model where they had a free service and then a paid service. Mm-hmm. And that they could just get feedback, and they didn't launch big. They kind of started small and then didn't really they marketed it, but not heavily. And then they kind of got feedback and then fixed things. And then that's when they started to pick up more customers and market it more. And then that's why I was so successful, is because they kind of started out small, got the feedback they needed, and then once it was kind of not perfected, but were kind of enough for customers, that's when they started to roll it out, because they knew customers would approve of it. If there are small issues, they could fix them easily.
Yeah. One of the things you just said that I liked a lot was that customers would approve of it. And that's one thing I think that Stephen Carpenter really didn't do, is that it was just this idea that he was trying to sell, and there wasn't a lot of customer approval. There was yeah, that sounds interesting, but no one was really on board. Whereas with Dropbox, you mentioned marketing. He didn't do a lot of marketing, but he marketed to a very specific niche. He went to super tech savvy, discussion groups and chat rooms. And then he launched, I forget the name of some of those websites because I'm not that tech savvy, but that he launched his marketing efforts, his brief marketing campaign videos designed specifically to attract those niches. He even talked about how he made a bunch of little Easter eggs and references to jokes that only the tech savvy would understand, so that they would appreciate hey, this is one of us talking to us and marketing this idea. That's really got people excited about it. And then as soon as he launched big time, he had a huge already kind of subculture following that really helped take him across the board. And very quickly he had some major opportunities with Dropbox.
Yeah.
Maybe this could have gone differently if Stephen Carpenter really focused on finding that customer segment that he should approach, he should market to. Yeah. So the next question it talks about in this discussion point is, how do you know which assumption to test first?
It's a hard one.
I don't know. I would maybe just say the first assumption. I'm not going off any notes or anything, but the first assumption would be your greatest one. So like with Rent the Runway, you would obviously test what designer dresses are getting rented the most, because that's obviously her biggest. That's what she does, is she rents dresses. And where he did the investing, I like that he tested, how would you guys like, or which kind of investors do you guys feel most comfortable with? I mean, that was a good one, because investing is what he was doing. So I think it's just your major, whatever your key goal is, whatever you feel like, your why, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's what you want to test first.
I really like the word you used was why. I've read several business books that talks about the importance of your why. And one of the things that I think that Stephen didn't follow through on is he understood what he was trying to accomplish, but what he kind of got lost in was his, like we've mentioned it a lot, like his own idea. He wasn't looking for he wasn't looking to solve. Well, I guess he didn't get a good understanding of what customers really wanted or needed, right? So he wasn't really taking away anything that was causing investors major, like a major inconvenience, or like they didn't enjoy doing. Like he really didn't take that away, and then but he also didn't add a strong gain for them. He had a good idea of, hey, let's get we know you trust your friends and family, so let's bring them all together in a social media platform. But he didn't get a strong gain of, with his understanding that, hey, these investors aren't really going to be interested in social media, and my product really is not going to jump out to users, if it's just everything but the social media aspect, because the social media aspect was such a big part of what Cake was initially doing. So that was, I think that not focusing first on what he brings, what they call the value they mentioned the value proposition. He didn't have a strong value proposition starting off. I mean, or at least a minimal viable product starting off. He didn't start with that. Hey, no. What would investors want from an online, investing service? Anyway,
I guess another assumption that you would always make is, if you are starting off on a small business, you're assuming that you'll get people to invest in you, So I guess that could be your first test, is just to see how much investors are, I guess, interested.
Yeah, I think that's another really great step. And he did find investors, from what I can, right? Stephen had people investing in his company, from what I remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember specifics, but currently, yeah. So, all right. So, was there anything else you guys thought that might need to be tested? That would be outside. So first we'd, is there something we could, we'd stand behind? I think we kind of understand that it's important that he test his idea better from the beginning.
Yeah.
All right. So the next question is, was building the data layer first the right approach?
I don't know if it was exactly right or wrong, but he should have had both the front end and back end worked on, not just the back end.
Yeah,
And so like I don't think it was like necessarily bad as as the first, but he should have also been working on the front end as well, and not just focus on one or the other.
I agree. Yeah. Because, I mean, you can't just have a front end product that doesn't do anything. At least that's my thought. Any other agreements or comments on that?
No, I agree.
Okay. Cool. All right. Last question regarding this case is, as a group, identify the main reason for Cake's failure. So was the failure just beyond Stephen's control? Or what low-cost experiment could Stephen have done to test the assumptions behind the main reason for failure?
I think his appeal towards his product. I think he started out, like it says, he started out great, but his just retention was terrible, and so I think his appeal to product, I guess, maybe was his biggest downfall.
I agree with him. Yeah. So, my thought is, websites generally, again, I'm not tech savvy. I've never built a website, but I've had several friends that have started businesses that don't have a lot of tech experience, but there's so many resources out there just to build a website on your own with a bunch of help for free or for very low cost. Like Stephen probably could have put something together very affordably that he could have taken to focus groups or taken to different like potential investors. Said, hey, look, this is what I have. This is what I want to use. What's your thoughts on it? For probably really cheaply from the beginning, and just made small changes as he went for, and have a really good idea on if what people were interested in. He also could have, I think it also could have really benefited him if he had something that he could to take to different brokerage firms and say, hey, listen, look, I've taken this product, this website out. I've shared it with X amount of people, so many people, and this is the response I'm getting, that they're enjoying it and they've used it and they've liked this idea. And I think that just having that research and just that information present as he worked with brokerage firms, they probably would have been much more willing to get in and help him early on and make his life a little bit easier. Like just having that data, I think, would have made everything so much smoother, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I don't really have much to add, but yeah, I did pretty much exactly the same thing. Just focus on just kind of build the product and then show it to a focus group saying, this isn't my concept. This is like my actual product. Like kind of play around with it, check it out, see what works, what doesn't work. You get a lot better feedback.
Yeah.
I think that's great. So I just remember just to try to keep an eye on our group assignment questions for this one. It just says, what should Stephen Carpenter have done differently that might have led to a successful venture? And then it wants us to give specific action and expected results. All right. So,
so I guess, first of all, who do you want to type that up? Do you want to do it? I could do it, or
yeah, if you're fine with that. Do we want to pause since we just talked about it and answer this question first?
I think that'd be good. Just kind of since we're on the same topic of it, just as well as to answer it.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm going to use the restroom real quick. Be right back.
Sounds good.
So let's see. Led to a successful venture. I think the first one we've just been talking about a lot is just that the testing at the beginning, having a kind of a
So we had a good
physical product to show.
Yeah. So build a cheap functioning, beta test, or they call it MVP sometimes, minimal viable product of the website and the service. I mean, he probably could do that for less than $1,000 or less.
Yeah. So what else could there be? I know it says it wants specific action. Okay, never mind. Okay.
So yeah, we put. I would then take that product, that website, and then I'd go talk with as many investors as I could meet with to find out if they would value, if they would use a service that like the website provided. Excuse me.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing we talked about was kind of focusing on the front end as well as the back end of the project.
I mean, by doing that, you can focus. Yeah, and by meeting with customers or potential investors to use the service, he could find out how the response to the front end. So.
Right. Is there anything else? Maybe we talked about a ton of stuff. I think another big one was like just kind of keeping it smaller at the beginning. Like I know he kind of was like kind of trying to make it as large as he could.
Oh yeah.
But just kind of keep it small at the beginning, just to.
Yeah. Well, I also think by like what we mentioned last, like focusing on the front end, that it'd be easier for users would enjoy the service more. I'd put a line because it wants like our expected results as well. So I think by building it small, a website, we get better feedback. I think by working on the front end, we'd have better reactions to the website in general. Like people would enjoy using the website more. Then we could start smaller and get better, again, more feedback.
With that. Is there anything else? You got anything, Cooper?
For which question? Sorry.
So this is going off the kind of the group assignment now, and so it's kind of said, what should Stephen Cooper have done differently that might have led to a successful venture? We have build a cheap functioning beta test, kind of a minimal viable product. Take the product and then meet with the investors. Focus on the front end and the back end of the websites. Just kind of keep it smaller. Kind of meet with the customers and then get their feedback.
Yeah.
And then from there, like once you kind of get the product figured out, you can go try and start making it bigger and larger now that it actually works.
I think with having the more customer, I would also say with additional customer feedback, he could take that data to brokerage firm to increase his advertising sales that I talked about that he would need for one of his revenue streams. Yeah, his advertising and sponsorship sales. He'd have numbers and information to back it up.
I guess one thing that I would maybe say is just extend the launch date a little bit until you've got a firm.
Absolutely.
I don't know, firm website, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like he started it and then he found all the flaws after he started it. So.
Yeah. All right. Well.
All right.
I think that's good. I mean, I guess Zach, you're the facilitator, so.
I agree. All right. So next case study. So Anderson and Horowitz case. All right. So far, okay, first talking point is so far we have learned to evaluate business models of startups. Today we will examine the business model decision of a startup in a mature industry. As a group, begin to discuss the following questions. Was the VC industry attractive for A16Z to enter in 2009? What was the competition like at the time? And all right, so I guess we could just start there with those two.
Okay, so if it was attractive to enter into 2009, I would imagine it probably wasn't the most attractive deal, because obviously it involved investing in businesses, and businesses just had a very hard time in the recession in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that it would have been a not so attractive, but a risk with a great return if it were, you know what I mean? I don't know. So
Yeah, I agree. Like it even showed it in the Exhibit 5. Looking at some of my notes, is that the VC industry had crashed quite a bit. So I'm surprised that these initially by this idea, like, hey, look, at like one of the worst times to get into this industry, we're going to jump in here.
yeah,
and change it up, but it's what it needed. I mean,
yeah.
But in a sense, that could make it attractive. It's kind of like with the stock market. I mean, when like stocks kind of go down, sometimes that's the best time to buy. It's a low.
yeah,
Go higher, but it's a gamble in a way. Like it was attractive in some senses, but in other senses, it wasn't attractive at all. So I guess this
For the public eye, no, but for the entrepreneur eye, I guess it would be attractive.
yeah, it could be like, oh, hey, there's a possibility it could get better, and if it doesn't, I'm losing a bunch of money. But
yeah,
if it does get better, I'm going to make a lot of money.
So what was the competition like at the time?
It's like I remember it saying like there's like big 5 firms that like made all the money, and then there's kind of smaller ones that were just kind of there.
Yeah.
And so like the competition was like you had to be big to compete. You couldn't, like being a startup was hard.
Wasn't it like the top 5 made 97% of the money?
It was something like it. Yeah, something like
crazy.
The rest were 3%, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
So I think not just that, but even those top 5%, you know, they still struggled with certain, you know, businesses they partnered with. So I think that. So like again, it says the next question is, what's the typical fate of a new entrance in this industry? Is they generally didn't do very well. It says, why is this so? And what were the trends in VC fund performance during this time? Let me look. So, do you guys remember anything about why was it that such a small number of firms made most of the money?
I don't remember.
I know their trends was like way down in like capital being raised. Like I guess was it money that they were making? What is it? Where'd it go? So yeah, there was a huge drop off. Looking at the net, there was a decent drop off. Like 20% of the industry like died off from like 2002 to 2012. So that was probably even after this time frame. So there's probably been less than than the number showing 2012. So they lost like 20% of the market, like just closed up completely. Number of VC. There's also like half the funds existent at that time period, so it was a huge nosedive from its prime in 2002. Although it was starting to rebound, it looked like around that time. Well, in 2012, it was starting to rebound. It could have been slower going in 2009. So anyway, that was some of the notes from the exhibits. Is that it just really the market wasn't really in a good position yet. It was just starting to rebound. I should say. With that, those are the trends. We talked about why. So, okay, I guess next question, then next talking point is, with all the entrenched incumbents and catch-22s, what silver lining did A16Z see? So, what made them jump into the market? Do you guys think?
Well, when I put it's been so long since I've done this, but it's like what I put in my notes was that they really communicate to entrepreneurs, like in the Jeff Gordon stated, they look for strength rather than weaknesses. So like while some of the bigger firms would look for like they look at the weaknesses and strengths of the entrepreneurship, they would look at the weaknesses and deny them the service because of the weaknesses. But in the case of A16Z, they wouldn't. They would look at the weaknesses, but they focus more on the strengths, saying they may have weaknesses, but this company has a lot of great strengths. Like I think it compared like Google and a few other corporations that didn't actually have. They had like big weaknesses, but they also had big strengths, and now they're huge companies. And so they kind of saw that, like saying, they kind of said, we're going to look at the strengths instead of the weaknesses because they have, and it could be one of these companies, for all we know, one of these large future companies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they would go through like 500 businesses at a time, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
You would, select 10 out of the 500. They were intense, I would say.
Yeah, they were. And I liked what they had to say, like, because these guys that started this fund, I was, when I started reading that we're going to read about a venture capital fund, I'm like, man, that's $1 billion, that's billions of dollars just to have a venture capital fund, like company. Like, who are these guys? And, these are the guys that started the internet usage to like pretty much gave consumers the ability to use the internet. So these are really well-known high-tech guys. So I guess that makes sense as to why industries trusted them to jump into, a venture capital firm, and they were specific in their firm that like who they were helping. The things that I think that was interesting about how they approached the business model is that, as well as their value proposition, is one, they were going to really help focus on the entrepreneur that were starting the company being the CEO and president. It mentions how a lot of those venture funds or venture capital firms would switch out, wanted to switch out the CEO with an actual guy that has business experience. And so I could see that there was a huge draw for people that were passionate about their company who wanted to make sure the company was doing well by teaching them to be like how to run a business outside of just the technology that they were producing. I also thought it was really interesting how instead of building like a quiet, small office space or empty office spaces, they talk about how venture capital managers and partners are generally always out just meeting with businesses, how they focus on bringing people together and having big, whether you want to call them conventions or gatherings or meetings that connected, Fortune 500 companies with entrepreneurs starting with in new technology that could have been really helpful and beneficial. So I think bringing those people together was a really interesting way to do it. And then, like you said, Josh, that you did a great job summarizing their focus on finding strengths instead of necessarily looking at weaknesses. So those were the big things that I thought brought a lot of value to their business, and that would make their business very appealing, their firm very appealing compared to others in this tech startups. All right. Next question is, I guess we kind of discussed, is how do they plan to succeed in this difficult environment? I feel like we covered that. Anybody want to add anything else?
Since I didn't really say much, I guess we're moving more towards like a social media type world, where people want to interact with each other and and be very transparent, I think. And I think that's what those conventions, like you were saying, were for, to be attractive, social, and just be transparent with everybody. So,
yeah. All right. Next, VC firms compete on their ability to source, pick when. How does A16Z's business model influence these abilities compared to other VC firms? So think of Source as the ability to get founders to come to the door seeking money. How does the way A16Z treat its founders different from the way traditional VCs treat them? So how are they able to get people to come to their door? All right.
Okay, what I got from the reading was really they treated them like people. I mean, these other VC firms would treat them like kind of like their own money, but Anderson and Horowitz really saw them as people trying to start a company. Like it's like entrepreneurs, and that, like, I mean, if I was an entrepreneur, like I'd find that attractive. It's like, hey, this person's actually treating me like a human being, not like some way to get more cash.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, something that they, gosh dang it. Something that they also did was they were looking more for people that wanted to stay in the business and help grow the business and make money, and not for the people that were in it to, build it up for a couple years and sell. So I think as like a business owner, you would want to go to the people that really care about the business. You know what I mean? Compared to, I don't know, get rich quick, I guess.
Yeah.
I agree with them.
Yeah, absolutely. They also did a really good job at surveying the industry, like looking at their competition, seeing who their competition met with, who their competition did business with, and evaluated, did we meet with those same people? If not, why? If the competition partnered with someone that we passed on, why? What opportunities did we miss? And they were really active about trying to be as involved in the market as possible, whether that's with other VC companies or with consumer tech startup businesses. They were really good at just collecting data and getting in and being involved. I thought that was really interesting and a really good approach. How will this change if A16Z begins to fire CEOs because they're not performing well? And
Where was this one at?
there's the other question to that, in conjunction with the first, is, so will this increase, decrease, or have no effect on the number of potential deals A16Z seeks compared to the competition? So if they start to fire CEOs, will that affect their ability to get in potential deals?
That's a hard one. It's like, I think it kind of, I don't know, like that's because like in some ways I can see it like people like being afraid of like going to them saying, oh, like if I go here, like they're just gonna fire like the CEO and you're in the company. But at the same time, a lot of people could see it as they're replacing the CEO with someone better. And so it's like, I don't know, it's like I feel like I need more data to really make a actual like decision, like an actual statement on that, because it's so hard to decide, like to determine.
I get what you're saying, because one of the things it mentions in the case, but I'm not sure how much detail it goes into. I can't remember now, but it talks about how they were really against firing CEOs, and that was one of the reasons why it made their venture firm so attractive, because most CEOs that met with venture capitals were the founders of the business. So they were like, hey, if you look at the most successful internet businesses in the market, all of their founders, like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, across the board, like a lot of those people, the guy that founded Dropbox, it even mentions specifically, these guys founded the business and they're still the CEOs and they're still super successful. So I think, that they had built this business model around the idea of keeping CEOs and training CEOs and leveraging their networking ability to help CEOs. And if they were to change that and start firing, I think they would just become another VC company and they would lose their appeal to a lot of tech companies. I mean, consumer tech companies. So I think it would definitely decrease how many deals they're making, and it would make them stand out compared to their competition.
Definitely agree with that. I guess I just forgot about that in the reading. So no, I definitely agree
Man,
with that. Then
we
it's
do a lot of reading for this class. There was like,
it's
I don't know what it was, like 100 pages by Wednesday that we had
something
to.
like that. It's like, and then I have another class on top of this one that's also a case study class I have to do. It's like,
Yeah, we're doing the same thing.
Terrible.
but
Yeah, it's a
so
lot.
okay, I know I agree with that. I think it would decrease.
Okay. Moving on. How does the operating team help A16Z source pick win? Does this increase the odds of getting more high quality deal flows? And if so, why?
Like I think it's like like in regular VC that talks about like, you source the best deals, you pick the best deals from that kind of pool, and then you only choose the winners. It's all about winning for them. But in this one, it's more like we're willing to take. Well, for A16Z, it's more about we're willing to take the risk for you. Like it might not work out, but we're going to do everything we can to make this work.
Yeah.
So it might not be the high quality deal, but they're hoping that like in the future it will pay off.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what makes them so different, is that they don't just choose the high quality. They kind of go after the lower people that kind of just don't stand a chance with the other VCs.
One of the things that stood out to me is that they built a really interesting operating team at A16Z. So you had to have owned your own company to be a partner, to come work with them, right? Like you had to have been a CEO at a company, or like one of the first members of a startup that like grew to success, because they wanted people that had experience and what the companies that were coming to them that they were funding were going through. They wanted people that had that experience. They didn't just want people that had business savvy. They wanted people that had that experience. I thought that was a really interesting way to build a team. That would also be really difficult because most startups fail, so they had a smaller hire pool than what was done on markets when it comes to hiring. Another thing that stood out to me was that they really didn't do the hierarchy of. They talked about it a little bit in most VC firms have like one head honcho, and then there's like a hierarchy where there's a few people under him and then more people under that person, and it kind of goes down the line. And how this head honcho can come in and veto, can like say, everyone can be on board, say, hey, we like this company. Like, no, I don't like it. We're getting rid of it. And how everyone kind of had like an equal say. And if someone really felt passionate, like, no, I really think these guys can do it. How they kind of gave them like, okay, like we trust you and your judgment, but you got to work with this company to make it happen. And so I thought that was really interesting, that it was a really good environment that encouraged communication, it encouraged teamwork, it encouraged it also encouraged individual members to follow up, individual partners or general partners, to really build strong relationships with the companies that they were funding. So I thought that was just a really, not that it was like earth shattering, but it was a great industry like change in the standard of how business was done that made them stand out and successful very quickly.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments, questions? All right. So do we think the things we talked about have an actual impact on the odds of success of an A16Z portfolio companies? And if so, how? If not, why do you think that?
I think, yeah, I mean, like we might, it's like, I think it's kind of what we've really been talking about. It's like, we're not going to always have success because we're not choosing the high quality, but I mean, it's like, it might be a little bit lower possibly compared to other VCs. I mean, that's what makes our business. It's like we can, yeah, I just lost my train of thought, but yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, they took it more as like it's a job. Like they need, like their success depended on how they did it. And so they did their job from the beginning of, picking and sourcing and all that good sourcing, and then picking and then winning and all that came down to from the very first day that they met to the day that they sold or did whatever, you know. So.
Yeah, I agree. I liked your comment about how they focused on the sourcing. Yeah, that was great. All right, last like little question topic thing is number 3 is put yourself in the shoes of Anderson and Horowitz. You must decide whether or not to seek to double your assets under management. Vote as a group. The decision must be unanimous. Considering the following as you decide: how many portfolio companies can one general partner reasonably support? Are there any economies of scale in this business? And then, will you have to hire more operating team people? If so, will the partners actually make more money for doubling their assets, or will all of you? Hey, sorry.
Okay, we got you.
I think it kept you recording. I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like it's recording still. So
Good.
hopefully. Okay, so yes.
All right, so I guess let's go back to the question. This is a pretty technical question, and I'm still kind of learning how to get through some of the stuff. But so first, I guess, do you guys? We're supposed to vote on if we think that we should double our if A16Z should double their assets under management. So double the number of people that they're partnering with. The vote must be unanimous. So we need to consider, like how many companies can one general partner reasonably support, as well as some of the other statistics. So off the bat, what do you guys think?
So my first thing is kind of what Horowitz said. He said, I worry more about inside problems than outside threats. Like he goes on to say complacency is a big danger. And so like if they kind of stayed where they were, like it would be okay, but like, in its own words, like that could be dangerous. And so like, I mean, in that sense, I guess like if I was Horowitz, I would be wanting to expand, get bigger, or like progress. It's if you're not progressing, you're regressing. So
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely expand geological rather than do different types like what was it, bio and stuff like that. I think they could move to New York, they could move to China, do all that stuff, and just grow from there. And with that, I think that they would need to double their assets. Even though they would probably have to hire more people, I don't think they would have to hire twice as much people, And so they would probably be getting about, half of what they're making added on to what they are right now, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I would agree that they would need to double their assets.
I agree too that they should double their assets. Their motto, one of the things that they talked about, the theories, is that often VCs don't encourage their companies they partner with to go big enough. So they're all about going big. So yeah, I would totally agree. They need to. It's part of their culture is to go big, is to expand more. I think that they should expand geographically. I told them that they should go to New York. I was a little hesitant about China because the economy does work differently over there. So like I would expand slowly first. So go to New York first, see how it goes, and then from there you could move forward. Now it wants us to talk about what we think. Let's see. What was the question? Sorry. So, are there economies of scale in this business? So, what do you guys think about that?
I don't really know what it's trying to ask there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, economies of scale. Sorry. So, I just looked it up just to make sure I understood what it was because I'm unfamiliar with the concept as well. So, economies of scale is referred to reduced costs per unit that arise from increased output of a product. For example, a large factory will produce power hand tools at a lower unit price than a larger medical system will reduce cost per medical. What the heck? It will produce power tools.
So is it saying if they go bigger, are they
are
more
they gonna?
likely to lose money.
So what they're saying is, by getting bigger, is it going to be cheaper for them to help out businesses? So that's what it's referring to. So economy of scale is as you get bigger, right? So a large factory can produce power hand tools at a lower cost per unit. So that's what they're saying is like, if the bigger you are, the more resources you have, the easier, the less expensive it will be to produce your desired result or output. So this class, one of the things this class really wants us to focus on or learn to do is to get is to use those exhibits really well, and run the quantitative, like the actual data numbers. And I'm still learning how to do some of this stuff. I wish that we would have more instructions on, okay, hey, here's the information you want to look.
Nice.
Right.
Did any of you guys do the bonus math?
I didn't have time.
No, that was too intense for me. I was like, gotta
I looked.
classes.
I was sick the other night, so I was looking at it and I was like, I can't even understand this right now. So it was just, that's where I wish we would have some additional help, is just with the quantitative side of this class, just to learn.
Yeah.
And I know we can't teach us all of it, but at least some of the basics.
Yeah. Definitely.
So
I just say we move on to the next one.
yeah, well, that's pretty much it, right? So
Yeah.
in my opinion, economies of scale should work in venture capital. It'd be easier for them to find funding. It would also make them more well known, so their ability to source will get cheaper and cost less in regards to per deal they make. And I like your idea. They probably could. They don't need to probably double their general partners, but they will need to increase their partners, by an additional 50% to take on the additional influx of assets they'll be working with, the portfolios, I should say. So yeah. All right. So it says at the end of the meeting, take time to give a summary of your votes and final decisions, thoughts. You'll need to provide a timestamp in addition to your link, so your instructor knows where to begin. Do you guys see a timestamp here? I'm not seeing a time.
I do not. Maybe when you stop it, it'll give a.
Okay, so I'm going to say we've been recording for at least an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's been about an hour and 10 minutes, around there.
So an hour and 10 minutes. Okay, so our summary starts at about an hour and 10 minutes of the recording. Okay. So just kind of going back through these questions from the.
We want to answer before we do that, do we want to answer the group assignment question?
Oh, yeah. That's a good
I guess we kind of did, but I wasn't really on that page. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so I guess we're in agreement that they should.
Yeah. Yep.
So I guess we all believe that they should expand geographically, but not necessarily into other sectors like life sciences and stuff, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I think I'll be good now. I think I can kind of throw all the rest of it together.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to make sure we give, specific. Yeah. I would just make sure we mention that the growth can be small, first going to New York, seeing how it goes from there, and then expanding to China. So, doing steps. All right. So, I guess summary, starts at about an hour and 12 minutes in. So, with the Stephen Carpenter case, we really focused on how he didn't build a strong
value proposition for his business, that he lacked a good MVP or beta test of his website, and he didn't take MVP to potential investors or users to see if they were interested in his product and service. If he would have done this, he could have found out early on where some of his obvious mistakes were made. The two things being that we talked a lot about was that he made a really big assumption about the aspect of social media would play in Cake and how investors and the demographic that primarily invest weren't interested in using social media, as well as he really didn't invest enough time in the front end of his website, so it wasn't really user-friendly. And as important as it is to make sure your back end is strongly supported, you need it to be able to, your website to function properly, to have a good experience for your users. So his market value and his customer segmentation were just kind of off. He was trying to market it also to every investor, and he didn't find a good niche in the market for him to grow. So he made a lot of big assumptions. We also talked about the assumption that he made to bandwagon off social media, and just kind of ride that trend, and how that might have been an incorrect assumption with his business model. Other things we discussed in the Cake case. Does anybody else want to add anything to that?
I think you got kind of most of it.
Okay. So I guess just the big thing was, testing your product, right? Testing the idea.
Test the product, making sure it's there, and then kind of giving it to the customer and getting the feedback, not just of the actual product, not just the feedback of the concept.
Yep. Now, with the Anderson Howitz case, we talked a lot about their ability to see a silver lining in a downed industry at the time, that they came in and changed the way that they approached venture capital funding. So, and they did this by focusing on building up CEOs of existing companies. They networked great with other companies in other industries to help build a strong network for their company portfolios, for those that they had done business with, as well as provide Fortune 500 companies opportunities to come in and meet with people that they worked with, businesses that they worked with. And so they were also very personable and very friendly. They kind of took, they were willing to take or do business with companies that other venture capitalist firms were not willing to do business with. So they were willing to take a little bit of risk because of the strengths that they saw in businesses. Due to their growth, what they had been able to accomplish up to this point, we suggested that they do double their expansion, or double their assets. And we feel that they should do this by expanding into different locations. They should go to New York first, kind of see how it goes after about a year, and then expand to China, and that would provide them the opportunity to grow. We feel that they wouldn't necessarily need to hire double the number of general partners that they have, but probably an increase of 50% would be sufficient. So that's just kind of a good summary of our takeaways from both of these cases. Anything else you guys would like to add?
I like it.
I think we're good.
All right. Well, thanks for coming, guys. I appreciate it. Hopefully does 8 o'clock still work for you guys next week?
Yeah, we'll have to see about everybody else. Once they sacrifice, because it works for me. So. Okay.
So I'll just tell everyone, I'll post this meeting. I'll probably email out a link to this meeting. Well, I guess I'll post it on the discussion board. They can find it there. I'll just shoot hey, we met. If you guys have any questions, let us know. And they can find the reporting link. So
that's good.
All right. All right, guys. Well, I'll see you guys then later next week. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
See you then.
Sounds good.
All right. See you then.